We are now joined by a man who played for the Giants from 1987 to 1992. He helped Big Blue win Super Bowl 25 over the Bills. None other than former Giants wide receiver Stephen Baker, the touchdown maker. Stephen, you got Lance Medow, Paul Dottino here on Giants.com. Big Blue Kickoff Live. Greatly appreciate the time today. Hope you and yours are safe and healthy. How's everything on your end?
Man, it's going very good. I want to thank you guys for having me on the show. And I have to say, I was at Giant Stadium, or MetLife Stadium, the other day when they did the annual Snow Bowl. Got to see my son play, and they raised a lot of money. It was just great to be back in the Giant atmosphere again.
Absolutely. Well, that is very nice to hear, and perhaps a sign that we are inching closer to fans and everybody else returning to normalcy at MetLife Stadium. And, Stephen, it is a pleasure to have you on the program. I want to start from your perspective, Stephen, because I think what's interesting about the Giants' offense entering this season is Daniel Jones and the personnel around him, for the most part, is actually going to be working within the same scheme, which is not something that Daniel Jones had the luxury of saying over his final year at Duke and his early stages of his Giants career. When you look back at your experience, Stephen, I know 1987 was the strike-shortened season, so maybe it's more of 88 to 89. How beneficial was it that you were operating with the same offensive coordinator and the same scheme?
Well, it was a lot easier because you know the plays. You don't have to think when you go out there. And everybody on that team, we knew our roles. So it was easy, and we've done it year after year. And with Ron Earhart emphasizing, the short passing game and just getting us the ball when he could, because as you well know, back then we were primarily a running team. But when they did throw the ball, we just made sure we were in the right place at the right time, and we all gelled together as a unit.
There's a lot of debate, Stephen, about Daniel Jones. People still questioning whether or not he's got the upside to be the franchise quarterback the Giants drafted him to be. Others who believe that, okay, it's a slow process. It's taken a couple of years, but he's making progress, and he's on the right track. How do you see it, and if there are any doubts or questions, where do you think they should be placed?
Well, I believe in the latter, man. I believe in him. And the only knock that I would have against him, and I'm sure he's working on it diligently, is when he gets tackled in the backfield and fumbles the ball. But otherwise, he's on the right track as far as I'm concerned. He's a mobile quarterback. That great run he did, and they made a lot of memes about him getting shot down against the Eagles when he was running. That was incredible by a quarterback, and he has the potential. To me, he reminds me almost like not quite the standard of Michael Vick, but something we haven't seen around here in a long time. He can make plays on third and long when they break down and make people miss. And I'm impressed with him. I am dead serious. I like him a lot. Ever since the first time he ran that touchdown against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I was a fan.
Yeah, that was his first game as a New York Giants starting quarterback. Certainly a memorable performance. I think the other thing that most people expect, Stephen, entering this season with Daniel Jones is, okay, well, he improves, to your point, his decision-making, ball security, and he gets a little bit more talent around him with the addition of a guy like Kenny Golladay, Kadarius Toney, who is drafted. What do you think of what the Giants did between the drafted free agency, specifically at the wide receiver position, to perhaps help him elevate his productivity?
Absolutely. Man, my boy Otis Anderson and I, we talk daily, and he mentioned to me, and I agreed with him, he's like, Babe, we need to get somebody who can take the top off the defense. And with the offseason acquisition of Kenny Golladay, who's primarily, he's a big play possession-type receiver, but we also got John Ross, who is a 4-2 guy and can put a threat on people. So I am looking forward to seeing these guys. I mean, the name sounds like a law firm. Golladay, Toney, Ross, Slayton, Shepard. Man, on paper, we kicking everybody's butt, but that's on paper. We got to get these guys to gel together, and I think we have the right coach to do that because, I love what he did last year. I'm not going to mention any names, but, sitting down certain players because, the team comes first. And I think we're on the right page. Well, especially with these guys, man. I'm looking forward to it. I'm always excited as a Giants fan, but even more so with these weapons that we have given Daniel Jones. Are you kidding me?
No, I tell you something, Stephen. It's certainly exciting to look at. I need to ask you something that's a personal bias of mine.
Sure.
I like to see a wide receiver room that's got a different collection of skill sets. Now, the Giants have added that skyscraper in Galladay. Now, with all due respect to some of the shorter receivers the Giants have had over the years, and I'm not talking present company necessarily, but you understand that having a skyscraper to add to the mix, to give you a different look, and to also give the quarterback a bigger box to throw into, I've always said that it's important to have one of those. The Giants haven't had one in a while since Plexico, and to some degree, Nixon Toomer kind of did some of that, but Galladay is that guy. How much of a difference do you think his addition makes to the wide receiver room?
It's huge, and he has to know his role and don't get caught up in trying to be the best receiver in the whole league. Be the best receiver for the New York Giants. We had a guy like that, Odessa Turner, before all those guys you mentioned. That was his role on the team. They told him, look, you're a big target coming across the middle, slants, bait, we need you to win on third down. Because we're going to line up three receivers to one side. Once again, it's everybody knowing their roles, and I think I know we have the right coach that can get that across to these guys. And I tell you, a big target is a must for a quarterback. Imagine when he's running that deep end cut, the 18 yards, and coming across the middle, and you see that big body frame going across there versus my little behind. I can separate from people, but to see a big target and then the radius of his arm reach, no, it's huge.
Stephen, on a related note, speaking of the dynamics of the receiving core, and I'm very curious your perspective, we often think, well, the more and more talent you add to a receiving core and the more and more guys that you line up, okay, now you're keeping the defense on its toes, right? You're making those guys think. From your experience, I know you emphasized, hey, when I played in the early stages, it was more of a run game attack, but your knowledge in playing the wide receiver position, when you add a guy like Kenny Galladay, you add a guy like John Ross, who you mentioned with the speed, how much do you think that could potentially open up the Giants' offense and really take pressure off of Daniel Jones, because defenses now really have to pick their poison in terms of who they want to double up?
Absolutely. It is huge. And with the addition of Barkley coming back with the threat of the running game, the DBs and the defensive coordinator is going to have to come up with some creative ways to stop these guys. And let's not forget Sterling Shepard. He should be, I'm sure he's the leader of that group. And we all know what he can do in the slot position and make people miss. And I would be remiss if I didn't say the whole key, and you guys know this, you got to stay healthy.
Sure.
You know, we lose one or two of these guys, and the backups, I mean, we got Dante, we got Pettis, right? Pettis?
Yeah.
He's going to be tough for him probably to make the team, but he's a burner, and you got to have guys that are willing to step up.
Well, you know what, Stephen? You just mentioned the running game, and I know it's always easy to say, well, it takes the pressure off the passing game. With the way the Giants have added weapons to the aerial attack, do you think they are still going to try to be a balanced team or a run team first that will try to set up the pass with the run? Or do you suspect that with the overemphasis on the aerial weaponry that they'll try to be a passing team first?
No, you know, that's a good question, because I remember when the coach came out with his first series of plays, he came out in 5 wides to start the season off. But because he's a little unpredictable, but if he's anything true to Belichick's creed or pedigree, his running game sets up everything, man. Hey, I play John Madden 2021 on video games, and I play these kids all the time, and I run the ball first, and can't tell you how much it sets up the passing game. So, you'd be surprised, because they'll come up in there and they start blitzing, then I hit Ingram coming across the middle. But, yeah, on a serious note, I really believe that the running game is going to pass, because then you can do play action, and you got all these weapons. Like I said, on paper, I am so excited, man.
You know, when you say those things, Earhart and Parcells would be very proud of you. You understand?
Oh, yeah. And I'm a wide receiver who came from a program that I averaged over 28 yards a catch. And I came here, and we didn't even throw the ball. But you know what? It was all about your role on the team. And that's what we got to get these guys to do. Don't get caught up in all that being the best receiver in the league. Be the best receiver for the New York Giants.
I'm glad, Stephen, you brought up knowing your role within the receiving core, because I think with all these names that we're talking about, and you bring up a very valid point, hey, it could look great on paper. Does it translate to the field? But one guy I want to focus on here is Darius Slayton, because he had a very strong rookie campaign. He was a little bit banged up last season, and maybe the numbers dipped as a result. But the reason I bring him up is, if I'm correct, Stephen, you did a lot of work with Jeff Hostetler, right, on the scout team early in your career, and I would say that was beneficial, obviously, when he filled in for an injured Phil Simms. And I think of, well, Slayton and Daniel Jones came in at the same time. How much do you think, even with a lot of new personnel being mixed in, that Slayton's chemistry with Daniel Jones could still help him be a prominent part of this offense?
It is so huge, and I hate to keep harping back on my career, but you're absolutely right. I was a backup, and I practiced with Jeff Hostetler every day, and he would say, Bake, let's get them yelled at today. Meaning that we're going to go 100%. They hold up the little cards. I was Gary Clark for the Redskins. I mean, we played like it was game time and would get Parcells to yell at them. And little did we know that we were developing a chemistry. So when Simms went down, we all just came, it was just like practice again. And we didn't miss a beat. And I'm pretty sure, I'm 100% sure that's the same case with Darius Slayton and Daniel. They have a chemistry that's there.
Well, it was about a month ago, as I understand it, Stephen, there have been reports that Daniel Jones did get a collection of his offensive guys out to Arizona to do some off-season workouts, understanding that right now with what's going on here, it's not possible. How much do you think that really helps? How much does that tell you about Daniel Jones as a leader? And will that small gathering, even though it was for only a week, will that be something that can make a difference when they finally do report to training camp?
Absolutely, and I actually read that report too, and I was very impressed by that because we did the same thing during the strike. We all got together and went to a local high school and worked out. But Daniel Jones to take it upon himself to say, hey guys, let's get better, basically is all what he's saying, let's get better. And you got to give a guy a lot of respect like that, because he's the leader of that team, and these guys just have to follow his lead. And I think we're going to be okay. That shows a lot of maturity on his part.
We're talking with former Giants wide receiver Stephen Baker here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. He helped Big Blue win Super Bowl 25 over the Buffalo Bills. I think another intriguing part of the receiving corps is the addition of Kadarius Toney, who is a really jack-of-all-trades type of player, Stephen. And the reason why I bring him up is because, when you look at your versatility, your elusiveness, it's interesting to see how Jason Garrett is going to employ him. He can throw the ball. He was a former quarterback. You can run him out of the backfield, and clearly he can thrive when he gets into open space. From a dynamic perspective, how do you think they will utilize him, and what can somebody like Toney actually add to this offense?
Once again, Belichick had guys that played receiver. He let them play DB. Basically, if you're an athlete, they're going to put you in positions to win. And that I believe Coach is going to do that with this kid, too. I watched highlights of him, and what I'm very impressed with Kadarius is how he plants his foot in the ground to make a move, even without the ball, to get open. I used to stomp so hard to get that separation, and I see this in this kid, and I don't see that in all the receivers that I watch when I'm watching the game. And I see what makes him so good. He's a tall frame, too. He's 6 feet and runs like Dave Meggett. and that's huge. I mean, I saw him. He's running reverses. He can throw the ball. We got to use him in a myriad of ways. Make the defense keep them on their toes.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned Meggett, because when Kadarius Toney was asked about who he kind of tries to style himself after, he was talking about Alvin Kamara, a running back. And that's the thing when you look at him, Stephen. Tony's got some meat on his bones and some power in his legs, and he runs like a running back, doesn't he?
Absolutely. Like I said, you watch that highlight when he stomps his foot in the ground and makes that move upfield. There's no hesitation. And that's a rare quality, especially from a wide receiver. So basically, it's not rocket science, man. Get the ball in this man's hands. Get him his touches.
And then let him do the rest of the work and the heavy lifting. I'd say that's a very strong philosophy to be implemented. The other thing when you look at this receiving core, Stephen, is Tyke Tolbert, the receivers coach, one of the things when he's talked to the media over the last few seasons has been, hey, he teaches all of these receivers the entire offense, the XYZ, the entire alphabet. He's not just focusing on, hey, you're a slot guy, you're an outside guy. And I'm wondering, from your time in the NFL, How important is it that a wide receiver is not defined based on one position, but they really open the door to move people around? So to your point, if somebody, God forbid, gets hurt, they know, hey, well, he has experience on the outside and the inside, and he's sort of an interchangeable part.
And you just mentioned Tom Coughlin in a nutshell. He made sure that the wide receivers, that we knew everything, man. We had to know the defensive fronts. We had to know where the linebackers were. We actually took tests the night before the game. And, of course, we didn't like him for that because we were young. But when it came down to it, we knew everything. There was no stone unturned, and we were interchangeable because we learned what the other people were doing, other receivers were doing, because it would give you an idea of why this is working and why you're the primary. And it's just huge that you can get receivers to all learn. And that's I think the way they do it in the NFL now. Everybody has to know all the positions because God forbid somebody go down.
Well, let's not talk about injury, okay? Let's okay, that everybody's going to be healthy, okay?
You're absolutely right.
Now, that creates, though, a logjam, Stephen, because we've already talked about Slayton, Galladay, Shepard. Let's not forget they also signed Kyle Rudolph, to form a double tight end combination with Evan Ingram. Now, if all those guys are healthy, I guess the biggest problem the Giants have is how do you get Kadarius Toney on the field? Where does he get those snaps from? And how do you best utilize him if you've got these other guys who are so established and we know what they can do?
Yeah, absolutely right. And like I mentioned earlier, I think we have the coach that's going to get everybody to buy into that because we experienced that too. I hate to keep harping back on my career, but with Bill Parcells. And you have to know your role and don't get upset if you're not in there right away or you're not on the field at a certain time. Don't go to the press and make a stink about it. Come talk to the coach about it. But I really believe that it comes down to knowing your role on the team. And once this offense gets rolling and the kids see that at work, because that's how they are today, if it's working, they're going to buy into it. If you want to win a Super Bowl, buy into it. This guy's done it before. Why not listen to coach?
Sure.
Well, Stephen, let me do a follow-up here with you, though, because where do you see, despite all of the talents and traits and versatility that Toney has and will continue to show as a pro, where do you suspect will be the easiest part or plug-in area of the Giants' offense for him to learn? Should they just say, look, for the time being, worry about being a slot guy, or should they say worry just about taking one of the boundary spots, or should they simply say, look, we're just going to give you a bunch of gadget plays to run? What would you say would be the best thing for him to master quickly?
Well, I would say that the outside, I played the X, and the slot is a little more challenging because you have a lot of reads with the linebackers blitzing and the safeties coming up, and all that can be evaluated during training camp. And the coaches know. That's why sometimes when you watch games and you're like, how come this guy's not playing? Hey, they can't put you in there if you don't know the plays because, the quarterbacks are well protected now. But back in our day, the quarterbacks could literally get killed, and we were told that by the offensive coordinator if we don't pick up blitzes, whatnot, if we're in the slot or even at the X position. But the X outside position is the easiest. They're all hard, but you know what I'm saying? It's a little more less difficult than playing the slot. However, when you're in the slot, you can put him in a myriad of ways. You know what I'm saying? You can put him in. He can do so much more from the slot, and they'll make that judgment. If he's ready, they'll put him in there when he's ready.
It's funny, we were bringing up Kadarius Toney, and you've been reminiscing about your career, because how could we talk about him without mentioning perhaps, Stephen, what he could bring to the special teams, considering what he did right at Florida. And I go back to your career because early in your career, you actually had some opportunities to return punts. So I guess my question is, and this is maybe more from a fan perspective that I completely disagree, and I'm very curious to get into your mind early in your career. We know, hey, the best way for a rookie to make an impact is to play special teams, but the fan viewpoint is, well, wait a minute. If he's going to contribute as a wide receiver, Steven, I don't want to expose him to additional hits on special teams. How much did that play into your mind, or how important do you think that is in the minds of a coaching staff when you have a first-round pick that you're dealing with?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I was a third-round pick, and, of course, I was pretty good at punt returns in college until I came to the pros and dropped one, and Parcells yelled, "I don't ever want to see him back there again."
I remember that.
So, I was not upset at that because the mindset of the special teams weren't like they were in college. We had a motto, "Don't leave a man on the island alone." When I got here, most of the guys were mad because they were on special teams. But it's so exciting to have somebody back, especially if he can make plays. You know what I mean? And I understand the fans' point of view. You're worried about him getting injured. But look at how it changes field position, man. 13 to 14 yards return is huge. And then you have a guy that's capable of taking it to the house. Man, and once again, you get the offense, the special teams to buy into it. Like, look, this is what we did in college. We have a special guy back there. Protect him. Don't leave him on that island alone. Do whatever you can to make those blocks because we have a guy that can make 2 or 3 people miss and take it to the house and bring the crowd to their feet. The kids just have to buy into it. And you mentioned the injury part. It's a part of football. However, I don't know. I'm kind of torn on it. I want to see him back there. I'm sorry.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Bring the crowd to their feet.
Well, it's certainly one way to get him some touches.
Absolutely. Now, put him back there on kickoff. Well, the rules have changed now. It was a little bit different back when we played. But if he was doing kickoff return and punt return and playing wide receiver in the slot, that would be a little much because then teams will start, okay, we're going to try to get this guy. You know what I mean? We're going to go after him and try to wear him out and go after him a little more aggressively.
Think about, you mentioned earlier, John Ross, who's another guy who kind of gets lost in this equation. And I think Dante Pettis, you mentioned him as well, another guy who gets lost in this conversation. But those two guys are burners, Stephen. They are burners. And they can do things deep down the field. And we both know that that's an important component that, quite honestly, the Giants haven't really shown a lot of in recent years. So, again, how do you weave that into the mix when these guys may be fighting for one or, for all we know, maybe 0 positions on this roster because they're so deep?
Yeah, that's true. But you need a player that can put that potential threat, or as we call it, take the top off the defense. And those two guys can do it. And, once again, I know I keep harping on it. You know your role. Coaches know your role. John, look, I need you to take the top off defense on this play so so-and-so can get across the field on the other side. If you're open eventually that's going to set up that deep post behind it, and they're going to hit you on it. Just don't get frustrated. At the end of the day, when you get the Super Bowl ring and the Super Bowl trophy and the accolades and knowing that you're a world champion, it's all worth it. That's what I would tell these guys, Don't we be caught up in all of that nonsense. I know I keep saying it about being the best receiver in the whole league and getting all these touches. I'm not getting enough touches. I can't show what I can do. Shut up, play the game, and know your role. And I'm not saying these guys are doing that, but you know what I mean as a whole, some of these players in the league today.
Well, you bring up a great point, Steve, and I think we take for granted all this talent on the field. Hey, everybody's going to go home happy, but just like they say in basketball, there's only one basketball. Well, there's only one football, and the quarterback, right, can only throw to one guy at once. So it's fair to at least keep that in the back of your mind. And that brings me to something I wanted to follow up that you were alluding to earlier in terms of what the look of this offense is going to be like, what the dynamics will be like, and how that could perhaps impact Daniel Jones' decision-making. Because with Saquon coming back, the one thing that I think gets overlooked, Steven, is Saquon caught a lot of passes. When he's out there for double-digit games, you could almost pencil him in for about 50 receptions. And we're taking into consideration, hey, bringing in somebody that could take the top off the defense. I guess what I'm getting at is, how much do you think with the deep threats and having the insurance policy of Saquon that Daniel, regardless of what happens with the offensive line, the options of dumping off the football and sort of picking what you want to go with is going to be there, as opposed to hoping that somebody can come through and work miracles within this offense?
Well, you hit a good point there, because I didn't realize that he caught that many passes, but now I'm thinking back, you're right. He would just hit him in the flat, and Saquon would do his magic. And I think by Daniel Jones being an experienced quarterback now, because this is his third year, correct?
Daniel Jones is going to be year number 3.
Third.
Yeah.
His third, okay. So, I mean, your third year in the league, they shouldn't be able to throw anything at you that you haven't seen. So if those plays aren't there, just dump it off to Sterling Shepard. And I'm sure that he's at that level right now. This is a big year for him.
Yeah.
I'm going by how Parcells would do it. That's what he told us as wide receivers and that rookie class that came in. Told us that it's a make or break year for you. You got to show me something.
My last question, Stephen, it has to do with, we go back to Daniel Jones, and we all say that this has got to be his breakout year. This is the year he needs to prove that the Giants were right, that he can be the guy to take them to the next level. That's a lot of pressure to put on this young man. But from what we've seen, he would appear to have the temperament to do it. Yes or no?
Absolutely. And like we talked about earlier, him just getting the guys together to go to Arizona to make themselves better as a receiving corps is huge. And you can't take that away from him, his desire to want to get better. And that's what I respect about any athlete, doing the stuff when you're not under the pressure or when the coaches are looking. That's a sign of a great athlete. What do you do when the coaches aren't looking?
Steven,
He's that guy today.
We're talking with Stephen Baker, former Giants wide receiver. Stephen, before we let you go, I want to actually ask you about a wide receiver on a division rival, because this is going to be a guy that the Giants are going to see twice a year. And Paul and I have had some conversations about this subject, and I don't think there's anyone more suitable to weigh in on this than a guy who is questioned about his size, his weight, his height, and whether or not he could actually make a name for himself throughout his NFL career. And you certainly can attest to that. The Eagles moved up in the first round. They drafted Devontae Smith out of Alabama. There's been a lot of questions that he doesn't have enough meat and potatoes on the bone, okay, to use a lack of a better phrase. What is your take on the questions surrounding Devontae Smith and how somebody like you could relate to being overlooked but then not shying away from contact throughout your career?
Absolutely, man. I would say to people, do not sleep on this young man, because remember, speed kills, and you don't know this man's heart. And based on some of the highlights that I've seen of him when I watched him play, he is a burner. And we all know, remember the great Cliff Branch? What was the term? Speed kills. And as far as matching up against him, we got a solid corner, James Bradbury, who I'm sure is ready to play, and bring him on. But we can't sleep on him. And I have a lot of respect whenever I see guys my size that are trying to make it in the league. And I have so much respect for them because I know what they have to go through. That's always a knock against you. Oh, I don't know if he could last a whole 16-game season. Hence why I never got to play in the slot as much. But always proved the coach wrong, because I always ended up the starter at the end of the season and finish. So you should never count out or misjudge someone just because of their size, because you don't know that man's heart. And trust me, he is a dynamic player as well.
There's no doubt about it.
I was going to say this, Stephen. He's probably a couple of Thanksgiving dinners heavier than you were. But today's NFL defenders, specifically those safeties, they are bigger, stronger, and a lot faster than they were when you played.
No doubt. And you want to know something else, guys? I played a golf tournament the other day, and I got to talk to Harold Carmichael, man. And I tell you, 6'8" guy, and we talked about today's receiving game. And I was so happy to hear that he thought just like I thought, as far as some of the antics that some of these guys do. You pick a 10-yard first down and you point and dropping the ball. He said that stuff burned him up. And we also talked about him going against Pat Fisher. I don't know if you guys remember, Pat Fisher was the little defensive back for the Redskins, and it was just an honor to talk to an older player that I once looked up to as a kid. We used to write number 17 or whatever receiver was playing well. We used to write them on T-shirts because we couldn't afford jerseys. But it was just an honor to talk to a Hall of Famer, and he was so humble.
Well said. He is Stephen Baker, who suited up for the Giants from 1987 to 1992. He helped Big Blue win Super Bowl 25 over the Bills. Well, Stephen, it was a pleasure having you on the program. We greatly appreciate your time, your insight. Looking forward to the upcoming season, and hope you and yours continue to stay